Imagine this. You're living a normal day, doing your job, when everything suddenly changes. You're thrust into a life or death situation that leaves you questioning everything you thought you knew about existence, reality, and even death itself. That's exactly what happened to Bill Letton, a retired firefighter whose story of a near-death experience will completely transform the way you think about life and what comes after. Hi, my name is Bill Letton. I'm a retired firefighter, and I live on the central coast of California. My life changed forever in 1994 when I had a near-death experience that shook me to my core. At the time, I didn't talk about it. There were no books, no YouTube videos, no community I could turn to for answers. I kept it all inside for 15 years. But when I retired, the memories came flooding back, and with them, questions that I couldn't ignore. Today, I want to share my story with you, not just to talk about what happened to me, but to offer a different perspective on life and death. Back in 1994, I was working at Station 11 in Goleta, California. There was a flu epidemic sweeping through the Santa Barbara area. Emergency rooms were packed, and our paramedic engine was running call after call, helping people suffering from dehydration, high fevers, and other complications. It was a grueling time, but we were doing our best. On one of these calls, we found a woman trapped in her dark, stuffy room. She was in bad shape, barely able to move or speak. As a paramedic, I didn't think twice. I climbed over her to adjust a mask and help her breathe. But as I was doing this, she exhaled, and I inhaled. I felt it immediately. Whatever she had was now inside me. At first, I pushed through, but within days, I became incredibly sick. I'd never experienced anything like it. The symptoms were overwhelming: fever, vomiting, dehydration. It got so bad that my family had to call 911. When the paramedics arrived, they found my pulse racing, my blood pressure dangerously low. I was rushed to the hospital, where a doctor quickly began administering treatments to everyone in the room. I remember sitting up, thinking I might be able to go home soon. But then a nurse pushed a mix of medications into my IV, a synthetic morphine and something for nausea. I didn't need them, but she gave them to me anyway. That's when everything changed. My wife told me later that my eyes rolled back and I collapsed. I was gone. The staff scrambled to revive me. They gave me Narcan, the drug used to reverse opioid overdoses, and started more IVs. My blood pressure had dropped to 40/0. They moved me to the intensive care unit, where I spent the night, unconscious. But during that night, something extraordinary happened. The moment I left my body, it felt like being released from a hot, stuffy closet into the open air. It was the most incredible sensation, like I was finally free. I found myself in a vast space filled with giant, colorful stars. These weren't stars like we see in the night sky. They were alive, radiating love and warmth. People might call them orbs, but to me they were welcoming, sentient beings. I wasn't a physical body anymore. I was this massive, energetic cloud soaring through this vibrant world. It felt like a cosmic orchestra was playing, and I was part of the melody. It's hard to put into words, but it was like pure joy, flowing through every part of me. I remember thinking, how did I forget who I really am? Everything about my life on Earth, my job, my worries, my relationships, suddenly seemed so small, like an elaborate illusion. As I continued flying through this realm, I noticed 3 beings standing ahead of me. They were small, cloaked in dark robes with hoods, but their faces were bright and full of joy. They smiled from ear to ear, their eyes sparkling with mischief. I recognized them, but I couldn't place from where. One of them looked at me and said to the others, "He doesn't remember us." They all started laughing, like they were in on a joke I didn't understand. Then I saw another figure, a tall, wispy being that seemed to shimmer like vapor. He felt different, like he was in charge, but not in a strict way. He moved gracefully, like he was underwater, and his presence radiated an overwhelming sense of love. Just being near him made my chest swell and my throat tighten, as if I was about to cry from sheer joy. At one point I said, "I'm not going back. I'm staying here." The tall being chuckled and replied, "Let's review your life then." It wasn't like a judgment. It was more like flipping through a scrapbook. We looked at moments, big and small, and he asked me, "What did you learn from this?" When we finished, he said, "It's time to go back." I protested, insisting that my wife and parents would be fine without me, but he just smiled and said, "You've got more to do." Before I could argue further, the world around me began to dissolve. The beings disappeared, and I felt myself descending. As I got closer to my body, I passed through a place that scared me, a dark, lonely void. It was heavy, suffocating, and filled with despair. I don't know what it was, but it felt close to the physical world, like a shadow of it. I didn't want to stay there, and soon I was back in my body. When I woke up, my blood pressure was climbing. The nurses were relieved, but I felt devastated. I didn't want to be back. For days, I was deeply sad, mourning the loss of that other world. Slowly, the memories of what I'd experienced began to fade. But I held on to the core lesson. Death is not something to fear. It's a return to who we truly are, a reunion with something infinitely loving and beautiful. Over the years, I've shared this story with people who've lost loved ones. I tell them, no one is ever truly gone. They're still here, just in a different way. It's hard for some to believe, but I've seen it. I've lived it. At the time, I had to keep quiet about my experience. People weren't ready to hear it, and I didn't want to risk my reputation. But now, I know it's a story worth sharing. Because if there's one thing I want you to take away from this, it's this. Death isn't the end. It's an upgrade, a liberation, and a return to the truth of who we are. So, if you're watching this and you've lost someone you love, or you're struggling with the fear of death, know this. You have nothing to fear. What waits for us on the other side is beyond anything we can imagine. Pure joy, pure love, and the deepest sense of homecoming. Thank you for listening to my story. If this resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, we're all connected, here and beyond. One of the most profound realizations I had during my near-death experience was how small and fleeting the challenges of earthly life really are when viewed from a higher perspective. I saw my life not as a series of events, but as a tapestry of moments woven together to create opportunities for growth. It wasn't about successes or failures. It wasn't about achievements or mistakes. What truly mattered was the love I gave and received, the connections I made, and the lessons I learned. In those moments outside my body, it became so clear that the pain and struggles we face in life are temporary and necessary. They're part of a larger design, a way to shape us into who we are meant to be. This perspective doesn't make life's challenges any less real or painful, but it helps us understand that they have meaning. Even the darkest moments have a purpose. They push us to grow, to expand, and to understand ourselves and others on a deeper level. I think about the people I met in the hospital that night. The doctors, nurses, and paramedics who fought to save me were all part of this intricate web of connection. Each of them was playing a role, not just in my survival, but in my understanding of how deeply we are all intertwined. At the time, it felt like chaos. Rushed decisions, hurried movements, beeping monitors. But now I see it as something beautiful. Each person brought their own energy, their own intentions, and their own humanity into that moment. When I reflect on the beings I encountered in that other realm, I often wonder if they were manifestations of my own spirit, ancient guides, or even aspects of something larger than myself. The three small figures, so full of humor and joy, felt like old friends, as though they had been with me for countless lifetimes. Their laughter wasn't mocking, it was loving. It was as if they were reminding me not to take life so seriously, to find joy even in the absurdity of it all. Their presence alone was a lesson in how light-hearted the universe can be, even in moments of profound transformation. And then there was the tall, wispy figure, the one who radiated such love that it brought me to the brink of tears. He was unlike anything I had ever encountered, yet he felt so familiar, like an old mentor or a long-lost part of myself. The love he projected wasn't the kind of love we know on Earth. It wasn't conditional, transactional, or fleeting. It was a deep, all-encompassing energy that held no judgment, only acceptance. I think about that being often, and how different the world would be if we could embody even a fraction of that kind of love in our daily lives. Returning to my body was not easy. When I woke up in the hospital, I felt as though a door had been slammed shut, locking me out of the most incredible experience of my existence. It's difficult to explain the sense of loss I felt. Imagine living in paradise, where every need is met, every fear is gone, and every part of you feels complete. Now imagine being yanked out of that paradise and thrown back into a world of physical pain, uncertainty, and struggle. That's what it felt like. For days, I wrestled with depression. Not the kind that comes from a chemical imbalance, but a deep sadness at having to let go of something so beautiful. I wanted to cling to the memories, to keep them vivid in my mind, but I could feel them slipping away, like trying to hold onto water with your bare hands. Over time, the clarity of that experience began to fade, but the lessons remained. One of the hardest parts of my journey was learning to carry those lessons without being able to fully share them. When I tried to talk about my experience in the years following, I was met with skepticism, confusion, and even ridicule. Some people dismissed it as a hallucination caused by the medication I'd been given. Others suggested it was a dream or a trick of my mind. I learned to stay quiet, to keep the story locked away, not because I doubted it, but because I wasn't sure the world was ready to hear it. For 15 years, I carried that secret, letting it shape me quietly. It wasn't until I retired in 2010 that I finally felt ready to speak. By then, I'd come to understand that the story wasn't just mine. It was meant to be shared. It was a gift, not just for me, but for anyone who needed reassurance that death is not an end, but a transformation. Since I started sharing my story, I've had countless conversations with people who've lost loved ones or who are afraid of dying. They often ask me, "What happens when we die? Is it painful? Is it scary?" And I tell them the truth. There is nothing to fear. Death is not the terrifying void we imagine it to be. It's a release, a reunion, and a return to the purest version of ourselves. One of the most touching moments for me was speaking to a man who had recently lost his young daughter. He was consumed by grief, unable to find any peace. When I told him about my experience, about the love and joy that awaited her, I saw something change in his eyes. He didn't stop grieving, but he began to see her absence in a different light, not as a permanent loss, but as a transition to a different kind of presence. It's moments like those that remind me why I went through what I did. If sharing my story can ease someone's pain, if it can bring comfort or clarity to even one person, then it was all worth it. Another question I often get is, do you think everyone experiences the same thing you did? My answer is, I don't know. I believe that our experiences after death are as unique as we are. Some might see loved ones, others might encounter beings like I did, and still others might experience something entirely different. But what I do believe is universal is the sense of love, connection, and peace that awaits us. Over the years, I've come to see life itself as a kind of training ground, a place where we learn to love, to forgive, and to understand. We make mistakes, we face challenges, and we grow. And when it's our time to leave, we take those lessons with us, carrying them into the next chapter of our journey. I want to leave you with this thought. The people we love, the ones we've lost, they're not gone. They're closer than we realize, just beyond the veil of this physical world. And when it's our time to cross over, we'll find them waiting for us, just as I found those beings waiting for me. So, don't be afraid. Don't let the fear of death rob you of the beauty of life. Live fully, love deeply, and trust that when the time comes, you'll be ready.